the key stuck in the lock, jamming with a stubborn clunk that seemed to summarize Leo's entire life up to this point. He jiggled it, swore under his breath, and shouldered the heavy wooden door until it gave way with a groan. The house exhaled a breath of stale air and old wood, a scent that was neither welcoming nor hostile, simply existing. It was a tall, narrow Victorian that had seen better days, its gingerbread trim peeling like sunburnt skin, but it was cheap, and more importantly, it was quiet, the perfect place for a man whose most significant relationship had ended 6 months ago, and whose current social circle consisted of the delivery drivers who brought his groceries. "Hello." His voice echoed in the cavernous foyer. Mrs. Gable. A woman emerged from a side room, moving with a fluttery grace that belied her age. She was wrapped in a shawl that seemed to be woven from tangled rainbows, and her glasses were perched on the end of her nose. "Leonard, you made it." She clasped his hands in hers, her grip surprisingly strong. "I was just finishing up the final touches on your paperwork. The place is all yours, Leo, please," he said, extracting his fingers. He looked past her into the dim interior. High ceilings, dark wood, and a staircase that climbed into shadow. It was exactly what he needed a place to disappear, to pour his heartache and confusion into his webcomic and hopefully, finally, meet a deadline. "Of course, Leo. Now, just a few signatures." She produced a tablet, its screen glowing with an unusually ornate font for a standard lease. He skimmed the document. Trent, utilities, rules about noise. The only odd clause was Section 4, Paragraph 2. The tenant acknowledges and accepts the current, pre-existing occupancy of the secondary attic dwelling and all associated arrangements. "Pre-existing occupancy?" Leo asked, pointing at the clause. Mrs. Gable's smile didn't falter. "Oh, just some of my late husband's projects, very delicate scientific equipment. The attic is strictly off-limits, I'm afraid. For your own safety. It's all in the agreement." She tapped the screen, scrolling to the signature line. "It's just a formality, Leo," whose desire to avoid conflict was second only to his desire for affordable housing, simply nodded. He scrawled his name at the bottom. The screen flashed a peculiar, deep blue for a moment before returning to normal. "Wonderful." Mrs. Gable beamed, handing him the keys. "I'll be traveling for the foreseeable future. Everything is on autopay. Make yourself at home. And remember," she added, her tone light but her eyes suddenly serious, "the attic." Then she was gone, her colorful shawl disappearing into a waiting taxi, leaving Leo alone in the echoing silence of his new life. The first 2 days passed in a blur of unpacked boxes and the familiar glow of his drawing tablet. The house was eerily quiet, the only sounds the hum of his computer and the occasional, distant skittering from the walls that he attributed to squirrels or mice. He hoped it was mice. On the third night, the silence broke. A low, resonant hum started, so deep he felt it in his bones rather than heard it. The lights in his studio flickered, and his monitor glitched, displaying a cascade of symbols that looked like a cross between ancient Sanskrit and a corrupted system file. Then, from directly above his head, came a sound that was unmistakably a sob, followed by a soft, melodic cursing in a language that was definitely not earthly. His heart hammered against his ribs. The attic, Mrs. Gable's projects. His mind conjured images of a secret meth lab, a hidden grow-op. But the sounds were too sorrowful. Grabbing the heaviest thing he could find, a solid bronze bookend, he crept up the 2 flights of stairs to the narrow door that led to the attic. It was locked, but the old skeleton key on his ring fit perfectly. The door swung inward, not onto a dusty space filled with trunks and Christmas decorations, but into a chamber that defied physics. The room was far larger than the house's footprint should have allowed, its walls seeming to curve away into a soft, stardusted darkness. In the center, on a platform that pulsed with a gentle light, stood a pot of shimmering, liquid metal, and inside, her hands pressed against the glass-like surface, was a woman. She was tall and willowy, with skin the color of polished moonlight and hair that fell in a silken sheet of pure silver. Her eyes, wide with alarm and hope, were the color of violets at twilight. She wore a simple, flowing tunic that seemed woven from starlight itself. She was, without question, the most breathtaking creature Leo had ever seen. As he stood there, Gaping, the front of the pod dissolved with a silent, fluid motion. The woman stepped out, her movements possessing an unearthly grace. She raised a slender device, scanning him from head to toe. It beeped once, softly. "Leonard," she said, her voice a melody that resonated in the quiet of the room. "You came." Leo's grip on the book and loosened. It clattered to the floor, the sound shockingly loud. Who are you? How are you in my attic?" "I am Anya," she said, as if that explained everything. When he continued to stare, she gestured to the device. "Your biosignature confirmed it the moment you signed the contract. The marriage is binding. I am your wife." The word hung in the air, absurd and terrifying. "Wife, no. No, I signed a lease. For a house. A normal house on Earth." Enya's brow furrowed slightly. She manipulated the device, and a hologram of his lease appeared between them. But now, interlaced with the English text, were flowing, alien scripts. His signature glowed with the same deep blue he'd seen on Mrs. Gable's tablet. "It is a dual-purpose document," Anya explained patiently. "A Terran lease and a Zillion marriage contract. By the laws of my world, your signature constitutes consent. Mrs. Gable is a facilitator. She helps those in my situation." "And what situation is that?" Leo asked, his head spinning. "I was to be married to a High Lord named Kellen," Anya said, her voice dropping. "A union of political convenience. He is not cruel, but he is ambition personified. I would have been a trophy, a symbol. I could not live that life. This contract," she pointed at the hologram, "was my escape clause. It grants me asylum as the spouse of a neutral world citizen. To break it now would invalidate my status. They would find me and take me back." Leo sank onto a nearby crate that was labeled fragile. "Quantum oscillators." He put his head in his hands. "So you're telling me I'm accidentally married to an alien princess? Who's hiding from a space politician in my rental attic?" "Not a princess," Anya corrected softly. "A member of a minor noble house." And yes, she took a tentative step closer. The air around her carried a scent of ozone and night-blooming flowers. "I am sorry for the deception. But had you known, would you have agreed to help a stranger?" Leo looked up at her. In the soft light of the chamber, she seemed both incredibly powerful and heartbreakingly vulnerable. He thought of his own escape to this old, lonely house. They were both running from something. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Probably not." Then the deception was necessary. She offered a small, hesitant smile. "I will try not to be a burden, Leonard. It's Leo," he mumbled, standing up. He felt dizzy. Okay, we'll figure this out. But you have to stay up here. And no wife stuff, okay? We're roommates. Weird, cosmic pact roommates." Anya tilted her head. A gesture he would soon learn meant she was processing something that didn't quite compute. "As you wish." "But, Leo, yeah, by Zillion law," she said, her violet eyes meeting his. "For the marriage to be considered fully valid and immune from external challenge, it must be consummated within 7 of your Earth cycles." Leo tripped over absolutely nothing, stumbling backward into a stack of boxes. "Consummated? You mean?" "Yes," Anya said, her expression deadly serious. "The joining. If we do not, the contract can be voided, and Kellen will have a legal right to claim me." He stared at her, his face burning. 7 days. He had 7 days to decide whether to send this woman back to a fate she feared, or to become a husband to an alien in truth. As he fled back down the stairs to the sanity of his half-intact life, her final words followed him, soft as a sigh. "The clock, as you say, is ticking." The chaos of the previous night had settled into a fragile, bewildered quiet. Leo had slept fitfully on his couch, the image of Enya's violet eyes and the word consummated looping in his mind like a broken record. He was making coffee in a daze when a crisp, official knock echoed through the house. It was a sound that promised nothing good. He opened the door to find a man in a slightly rumpled suit, holding a badge that identified him as Julian from the Terran Xenological Integration Bureau. He had the tired eyes of someone who spent his life dealing with the universe's paperwork. "Leonard Miller, I'm Agent Julian. We have a situation." He didn't wait for an invitation. Stepping inside and glancing around with a practiced eye, "We received a priority flag from a Mrs. Gable regarding a diplomatic placement." Is the individual in question still on the premises? Before Leo could fabricate a lie, Anya descended the stairs. She had changed into a simple, Earth-like dress she must have replicated. But her silver skin and ethereal grace made the humble cotton look like haute couture. She regarded Julian with a calm, regal authority that made Leo feel even more underdressed in his pajama pants. "I am Anya of House Zill," she stated, her tone leaving no room for question. Julian single quotes as shoulders slumped slightly, as if he'd been hoping for a mistake. "Right, of course you are." He opened a sleek tablet. "According to the Interstellar Asylum Accord, your presence here under a marital contract triggers a series of compliance verifications. We can't have a noble from a signatory world living in a terrestrial residence without confirming the legitimacy of the arrangement." "It's legitimate," Leo said, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat. "We're married." Julian gave him a look that was pure, unadulterated skepticism. Miller, your dating app history from last week shows a marked preference for women named Stacy, who enjoy hiking. This is a significant deviation." He turned back to his tablet. "You have to pass a relationship authenticity evaluation. First step, a joint interview." Now, he herded them into the living room, directing them to sit side by side on the sofa. It was the closest Leo had been to Anya, and he was acutely aware of the subtle warmth radiating from her, the strange, floral scent that made his head feel light. Julian positioned himself opposite them, tablet at the ready. "Let's begin. Question 1. What was your first date?" Leo's mind went blank, a white, static void. He could feel Anya tense beside him. "It was by the water," Anya said softly, her eyes distant. The light from the great reflector was shimmering on the surface. "We spoke for many hours," Julian typed, his expression neutral. "The great reflector? He means the lake," Leo blurted out, grabbing onto the lifeline she'd thrown him. "Lake Michigan. We went for a walk. The sunset was really reflective." He winced internally. Julian's single quotes as eyebrow twitched. "I see. And what is your partner's favorite Earth food?" "Pizza," Leo said immediately, with far more confidence than he felt. Anya turned to him, a genuine spark of curiosity in her eyes. "What is pizza?" Julian stopped typing. "Miss Zill," she recovered smoothly. "He has not yet had the pleasure of introducing me to it. He guards his favorite things jealously, like a treasure." She placed a hand lightly on Leo's arm. The contact was electric, a jolt that shot straight to his core. "He is a man of deep, hidden passions." Leo stared at her, his mouth slightly agape. She was good at this. Julian looked back and forth between them, his skepticism now warring with bemusement. "Okay, final question. What is one quirky, endearing habit your partner has?" The silence this time was profound. Leo scrambled. He knew nothing about her. Did she have habits? Did aliens snore? Did they misplace their keys to other dimensions? Anya spoke again, her voice softening. "He talks in his sleep," she said. "He mutters about his art, about the characters he draws, as if they are real people he cares for deeply. It is a window into a heart that feels things very intensely." Leo was stunned into silence. It was a complete fabrication, but it was so specific, so strangely accurate to the way he wanted to be perceived, that it felt more real than any truth. He looked at her, and for a fleeting second, the pretense fell away. She wasn't just reciting lines. She was building a version of him, a version she saw perhaps without even trying. Julian sighed. "Saving the file. It's a start." "Barely." The performance was a little uneven. Miller, try to keep up." He stood up. "Next evaluation is in 2 days. A social integration test. You'll be going on a double date with a verified, stable terrestrial couple. Try to look like you actually enjoy each other's company." After Julian left, the house felt even quieter. Leo finally found his voice. "How did you do that? The sleep-talking thing?" Anya looked away, a faint, silvery blush tinting her cheeks. "I may have monitored your sleep cycles for security purposes. Your room is directly below the attic. The auditory sensors are quite sensitive." He should have been angry, violated, but all he could feel was a bewildered awe. "You listened to me mumble about plot holes?" "It was not my intention to intrude," she said, her gaze meeting his again. Sincere and a little vulnerable. But when he asked the question, "It was the only truth I had about you." The word truth hung in the air between them, fragile and new. Leo realized then that this wasn't just about passing a test or fulfilling a contract. It was about two strangers from different worlds trying to find a single, shared truth in a constellation of lies. And for the first time, the idea didn't seem entirely terrifying. The double date felt like a walk to the gallows. Leo's best friend, Ben, and his girlfriend, Chloe, were waiting at a booth in the back of a noisy, dimly lit pizza place called Tony's. Ben, a bear of a man with a perpetual grin, was Leo's opposite in every way. Chloe was sharp, perceptive, and missed nothing. "So, you're the mysterious Anya," Chloe said, her eyes sweeping over Anya with open curiosity as they slid into the booth. "Leo's been keeping you a secret. Our connection was." Sudden, Anya replied, her regal tone somehow fitting in even here, amidst the checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic. He wished to protect it from outside scrutiny. Ben clapped Leo on the back. "Sudden? Dude, you ghosted us for 2 months and then texted, 'Hey, got married, be back soon.' That's not sudden, that's a nuclear explosion." Leo forced a laugh. "It's been a whirlwind." The waiter came, and Leo ordered a large pepperoni pizza. When it arrived, Anya stared at the greasy, cheesy circle as if it were a complex scientific specimen. "You consume this communally?" she asked, watching Ben tear into a slice. "That's the idea," Chloe said, her head tilted. "You've never had pizza before?" Anya looked to Leo, a silent plea in her eyes. He jumped in. "She's from a very remote part of Norway. Very traditional. Lots of, fish, right?" Chloe said, not buying it for a second. Anya, with meticulous care, used a knife and fork to cut a tiny piece from the tip of a slice. She ate it, her expression unreadable. Then, her violet eyes widened almost imperceptibly. A second later, she took a larger, more enthusiastic bite. "The enzymatic reaction of the dairy proteins with the fermented grain substrate is remarkably pleasurable," she announced, though the slight, delighted smile on her face said more than her words. Ben roared with laughter. "She's a weird one, Leo. I like her." The conversation flowed, with Leo and Anya falling into a rhythm. When Ben asked how they met, Leo talked about Mrs. Gable's house, which was technically true. When Chloe asked what Anya did for a work, Anya spoke about cultural logistics and diplomatic translation, which wasn't entirely a lie. Leo found himself watching her, not as an alien he was forced to protect, but as his partner in this delicate, high-stakes dance. She was clever, weaving their fabricated narrative with threads of half-truths and plausible details. At one point, Chloe, trying to be friendly, reached across the table to touch Anya's hand. "I just love your nail color. Is that a silver gel?" Anya recoiled instinctively, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "My biointegument does not accept foreign coatings." The table went quiet. Leo's heart stopped. But then Anya slowly extended her hand, offering it to Chloe. "It is simply my natural state." Chloe, to her credit, gently took Anya's hand, examining the flawless, metallic silver skin. "Wow, that's incredible. You have amazing genes." The moment passed, but the tension lingered. On the way out, while Ben was paying the bill, Chloe pulled Leo aside. "She's beautiful, Leo, and obviously brilliant. But what's really going on? She acts like she's never seen a pepperoni before. It's complicated." "Chloe," Leo sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It always is," she said, her gaze softening. "But the way you look at her, that's not complicated. That's the most straightforward I've seen you in years. Just don't get lost in whatever story you're telling everyone else." In the car ride home, Anya was quiet. "Did I perform adequately?" she finally asked, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "You were perfect," Leo said. "And he meant it. You saved me when I froze. You're better at this than I am. It is easy to construct a fantasy," she murmured. "More difficult to live within one." She turned to him. "Your friend Chloe is very perceptive. She sees the spaces between our words." Leo nodded, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Chloe was right. He was getting lost in the story. The line between protecting Anya and wanting the fantasy to be real was blurring, and he was no longer sure which side he was on. He had set out to save a stranger, but he was starting to fear he might be the one who needed saving. The third evaluation was a home inspection. Agent Julian returned, this time with a sensor that beeped as it scanned for cohabitational resonance. He seemed almost disappointed when it confirmed that both their biological signatures were deeply embedded in the house's environment. The data checks out, Julian admitted, putting the device away. Your shared space shows a high degree of entanglement. It seems you're actually living together. As he spoke, the air in the room grew cold, a shimmering portal, like a tear in the fabric of reality. Our eyes open in the center of the living room. Leo stumbled back, but Anya went rigid, her face a mask of stunned apprehension. A man stepped through. He was tall like Anya, with the same elegant bone structure, but where Anya was moonlight. He was polished obsidian. His hair was black and sleek, his eyes a piercing, intelligent gold. He wore clothes of a dark, sleek material that seemed to drink the light. He was, Leo had to admit, devastatingly handsome. Anya, the man said, his voice a smooth, cultured baritone. You look well, Kellen, Anya breathed, her voice tight. Julian looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Lord Kellen, this is an unscheduled, unauthorized planetary entry. My apologies, Terran functionary, Kellen said without looking at him, his golden eyes fixed on Anya. I merely came to see for myself, to understand your choice. His gaze finally drifted to Leo, and it was like being scanned by a machine. There was no hostility, only a profound, unshakable condescension. This is the artist. Leo felt every inch of his inadequacy, his ink-stained jeans, his worn-out t-shirt, his entire unremarkable life. He is my husband, Anya said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction as Kellen asked gently. He took a step forward, and Leo instinctively moved to stand beside Anya. Kellen's lips quirked in a faint smile. How protective. He turned his attention back to Anya. Anyanka, this charade has gone on long enough. The council is willing to overlook this youthful rebellion. My offer still stands. Come home. Take your rightful place at my side. We can do great things for our people. He didn't demand. He didn't threaten. He offered a kingdom, a purpose, a life of meaning and power. And he made Leo's offer a shared house, a webcomic, and pizza feel like a childish fantasy. You have built a pleasant fiction here, Kellen continued, his voice almost kind. But it is a story written on a foundation of legal trickery. What can he truly offer you? A life of hiding? Of mediocrity? Anya was silent, her eyes darting between Kellen's imposing figure and Leo's tense, vulnerable one. Leo saw the conflict raging within her. Kellen represented her past, her duty, her world, everything she knew. She doesn't have to decide right now, Leo said. His voice stronger than he expected. Kaelian finally gave him his full attention. Doesn't she? Time is a luxury, Terran, one you cannot afford. I will return in 24 hours for her answer. He gave a slight, formal bow to Anya, ignored Julian completely, and stepped back through the portal, which vanished without a trace. The room was silent. Julian muttered something about filing forms and quickly left. Leo and Anya were alone in the wreckage of the moment. The pretense had been shattered by a reality more powerful than any government test. He's what you were supposed to have, Leo said, the words tasting like ash. He is what was chosen for me. Anya corrected, her arms wrapped around herself. There is a difference, is there? Leo's frustration and insecurity boiled over. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like he can give you everything I can't. No hiding, no lies, no bureau agents in cheap suits. Just a crown. Anya looked at him, her violet eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You think that is what I want? A crown? She took a step toward him. Leo, I ran from that crown. I chose a dusty earth house and a man who draws stories for a living. I chose the possibility of something real over the certainty of something empty. But you're not sure, are you? He pressed, his heart aching. You looked at him, and I saw it. You hesitated. I hesitated because his world is my home. She cried, her composure finally breaking. Because the choice is not between a good man and a bad one. It is between my entire history and a future I can barely imagine. Can you not understand that? He could. That was the worst part. He understood completely. He had run to this house to escape his own history, his own failures. And now he was asking her to do the same, but on an unimaginable scale. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He just turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the quiet living room, the gulf between them feeling wider than the space between their stars. The final evaluation was to be a public vow affirmation, held at the local botanical gardens under the guise of a cultural exchange ceremony. Agent Julian had outdone himself, arranging a small pavilion and even a human officiant. It was all for show, a final piece of theater for the galactic record. But as Leo stood under the woven canopy of Wisteria, waiting, he knew nothing about this felt like a performance anymore. He saw Anya walking towards him, escorted by Julian. She wore a simple, Earth-style white dress, but her silver skin and hair made it seem otherworldly. She looked ethereal and terribly sad. Leo's heart felt like a stone in his chest. He had barely spoken to her since Kellen's visit, the unspoken question hanging between them like a sword. The officiant began speaking, generic words about commitment and partnership. Leo wasn't listening. He was watching Anya's face, searching for any sign of what she would choose. Then, as the officiant asked if they affirmed their bond, the air grew cold. Kellen's portal shimmered into existence at the edge of the pavilion. He stood there, silent, a king awaiting the return of his queen. His presence made the entire ceremony feel like a quaint, ridiculous puppet show. The officiant stammered to a halt. Julian looked like he was going to be sick. Anya looked from Kellen to Leo. Her eyes were filled with a storm of emotion. This was the moment. The choice. Leo took a deep breath. The fear, the insecurity, the feeling of being an imposter, it all melted away, burned up by a simple, clear certainty. He loved her. It was insane and impossible, but it was the truest thing he had ever felt. He didn't look at Kellen. He looked only at Anya. When I met you, Leo began, his voice quiet but carrying in the tense silence. I was hiding. I thought this house was my escape. But you were the escape. You turned my quiet, lonely world into something breathtaking. He took her hands. They were trembling. I don't have a crown to offer you, Anya. I have a messy house and a struggling career and a life that's about as far from royal as you can get. But it's a real life, and I want to share it with you. Not because of a contract, but because every time you walk into a room, my world makes sense. Because you think my terrible puns are linguistically innovative. Because you tried to use a toaster and nearly fused the power grid to understand how I make breakfast. A small, teary smile touched her lips. The contract brought you here, Leo said, his own eyes stinging. But I'm asking you to stay, not as my wife from Zill, but as my partner, here on Earth, with me. Please. Anya looked at him, and the storm in her eyes cleared, replaced by a deep, unwavering calm. She turned to Kellen. Thank you for the honor of your offer, Kellen, she said, her voice clear and strong. But my home is here now. My choice is here. She turned back to Leo, squeezing his hands. My heart is here. She turned to the officiant. I affirm this bond. One choose Leonard Miller, not by contract, but by choice. For a long moment, Kellen was silent. Then he gave a single, slow nod. It wasn't a nod of defeat, but of respect. A choice made freely is the only one that has any value, he said. Farewell, Anyanka. He glanced at Leo, and for the first time, the condescension was gone. Take care of her, Terran. She has chosen a storm over a calm sea. With that, he turned and disappeared through the portal, which sealed shut behind him, leaving only the scent of ozone and the quiet hum of the earth. The tension broke. Julian let out a huge, relieved breath. The officiant, utterly confused, mumbled, I now pronounce you. Well, you know. Under the canopy of Wisteria, Leo and Anya finally kissed. It was nothing like he had imagined in his frantic anxieties. It was soft and sure, and tasted of starlight and tears and a future he had never dared to dream of. It was not a consummation of a contract, but a promise, a beginning. Later that evening, back in their kitchen, Anya was examining the toaster with a new determination. I believe I understand the principle now. The key is not to override the thermal regulator, Leo laughed, pulling her away from the appliance and into his arms. We can order pizza. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. That sounds perfect. Outside, the stars were just beginning to appear. They were no longer points of light in a distant, cold sky, but familiar suns, guiding the way for travelers, welcoming others home. In a quiet house on Earth, an artist held his alien wife, and the universe, for once, felt perfectly, wonderfully in place.